These two phones from Motorola just have a 1000 rupee price difference. But which one is actually better? The Motorola Edge 50 Neo or the Edge 50 Fusion? So the Motorola Edge 50 family is huge. The Pro, the Fusion, the Neo, the Ultra, there are a plethora of models spanning different price points. But obviously, since some of these phones are quite close in price points to each other, there comes the problems of redundancies. So the Edge 50 Fusion starts at Rs 22,000 while the Edge 50 Neo is priced at 23k. The difference is not too much, but is one significantly better than the other? And has Motorola made one of its models obsolete by pricing the phone so close? Let's answer all of that and more in this comparison. But before that, please subscribe. We're trying to hit 400k subscribers. If you subscribed, comment 400k gang in the comments. So let's get the specs out of the way first. You can see them on your screen, so pause now if needed. The Motorola Edge 50 Neo seems to have an edge, no pun intended, in terms of most specs, but it falls behind when it comes to battery capacity. The LTPO display and an added telephoto camera add to the Edge 50 Neo's appeal, but let's see if the smaller battery impacts its usability. We'll discuss that and more in this comparison. Stay tuned to the end for a camera and video comparison as well. Starting with the build and design, the Edge 50 Neo has a flat display with sharper corners, while the Edge 50 Fusion sports a curved display with rounded corners. The Edge 50 Neo is quite a departure from Moto's usual style, which actually mimics what you see on the Edge 50 Fusion. Both phones have a vegan leather back panel, but the Edge 50 Fusion's leather material is a bit softer. It feels more satin-like, but note that the softer leather is more prone to scratching and picking up dirt. Thanks to the rounded edges of the Fusion, it's also more comfortable to hold. It fits the natural contours of your hand better, but the Edge 50 Neo's flat and boxy design may be more preferable to gamers since curved panels usually suffer from accidental touches on the corners, which isn't ideal for gaming. As for the weight and thickness, the Edge 50 Neo is only 0.2 mm thicker, but it is slightly lighter than the Fusion. The buttons are a lot more tactile on the Fusion, it's slightly mushier on the Neo. Both phones are IP68 rated, but the Edge 50 Neo also comes with military standard protection, which makes it more rugged. The haptics are definitely stronger on the Edge 50 Fusion. As for the fingerprint sensor, both the phones have decent optical sensors, but the Edge 50 Neo does tend to misread fingerprints from time to time. This section is a tie between both of these phones because they both have their pros and cons, and ultimately it comes down to whether you prefer a flat display or a curved display. There's no two ways about it. The Motorola Edge Neo is far ahead in the display section. Yes, the Edge 50 Fusion has faster 144Hz refresh rate and Gorilla Glass 5 protection versus Gorilla Glass 3 on the Neo, but in every other metric, the Edge 50 Neo races forward. It has an LTPO P OLED panel, which is extremely rare at this price. It's a big bonus here, especially since the Neo actually has a smaller capacity battery, and LTPO displays help conserve battery life by being able to drop the refresh rate down to 1 Hz when the screen is static. The Edge 50 Fusion, on the other hand, only goes down to 60 Hz, and on auto mode, it cannot even use 144 Hz. It actually limits itself to 120 Hz. So to use 144 Hz, you will have to sacrifice battery life, as the screen will always refresh at 144 Hz. To be honest, I think 144 Hz displays are only useful on gaming phones that can play games at a higher frame rate. The Edge 40 Fusion's processor isn't particularly great for hardcore mobile gaming. Moving on, both displays look good, but the Edge 50 Neo has a higher resolution, so everything looks a bit more crisp. Moreover, content pops more on the Neo and highlights look a lot more brighter, thanks to HDR10+ support, which is missing on the Fusion. All in all, the Edge 50 Neo has the superior display for sure. The Edge 50 Neo's Dimensity 7300 is faster on paper than the Edge 50 Fusion Snapdragon 7S Gen 2, since it has a max clock speed of 2.5 GHz as compared to the Snapdragon's 2.4 GHz clock speed. However, the Edge 50 Fusion comes in a 12GB RAM variant, whereas the Neo only offers 8GB RAM. In synthetic benchmarks, the Motorola Edge 50 Neo edged out the Fusion by a relatively small margin in AnTuTu, Geekbench and PCMark work. In GPU benchmarks, you can see the same trend in 3DMark Wildlife Extreme, but the Fusion actually comes up in front in GFX bench tests. The scores, however, are lower than the OnePlus Nord CE4, which also has better GPU scores. So if you're a gamer, it would be better to ditch both of these and go for the Nord CE4 instead. In real world, both phones are buttery smooth. Animations look nice and the OS is bloatware free, which is like a breath of fresh air in the mid-range segment. However, the Edge 50 Neo comes out ahead in terms of software support since Motorola has promised 5 years of Android updates on this phone, which makes the Fusion's 3 years look pale in comparison. Thanks to this and slightly better performance in benchmarks, the Motorola Edge 50 Neo takes the win here. As for battery life, the Edge 50 Fusion with its larger 5000 mAh battery takes the lead. It lasted 16 hours and 54 minutes in our 4K video loop test, whereas the Edge 50 Neo lasted 13 hours and 22 minutes in the same test with its 4310 mAh battery. Both displays were calibrated to 200 nits. Now, while the Moto Edge 50 Fusion seems far ahead, the Edge 50 Neo is still no slouch, doing quite well with its tiny battery. Both phones will easily last most users one full day, and the Fusion may even be a 2-day companion for light users. As for charging, both phones support 68-watt wired charging. The Edge 50 Neo's smaller battery charges from 0 to 100 in 39 minutes and the Fusion does the same in 48 minutes. But the Neo's advantage is 15-watt wireless charging, which is missing on the Fusion. Now for the cameras. The Neo has an extra 10-megapixel telephoto camera with 3x optical zoom, which really adds to the camera array's versatility. In daylight, both phones click solid pictures from the primary camera. The Edge 50 Neo's photos have slightly more natural colors, but detail levels are pretty similar. Dynamic range is much stronger on the Neo though. There are multiple examples for this. As for the ultra-wide shooter, the Neo's photos have more information in the shadows and the corners are a little less noisy. 3x telephoto shots look great on the Neo, but the Fusion's digital 2x is not too bad either. Macro photos are possible on both phones, but once again the Neo's output is better. But for portraits, the Fusion has more consistent output. Edge cutout is better and the skin tone looks more even on the Fusion. Plus, 50mm shots on the Neo get this weird yellow hue for some reason. But obviously the option to have 3x portraits is great and only present on the Neo. As for selfies, I found that the Neo's output is slightly better. In low light though, it's a tie. Both phones suffer from unfocused, noisy photos at times. As for low light video, the Edge 50 Neo is a bit brighter. In daylight 4K videos, the Edge 50 Neo once again comes out on top in terms of detail. So which mid-range Motorola Edge 50 should you buy? The Edge 50 Fusion and the Edge 50 Neo both have their strengths and weaknesses, but each caters to different user needs. The Edge 50 Neo feels more versatile with a superior display, an added telephoto lens and wireless charging to sweeten the deal. Plus, that 5-year software promise is gold in the mid-range market, making it ideal for those who want a solid future-proof device. On the other hand, the Edge 50 Fusion's larger battery and more comfortable design may sway the vote for some. However, if you ask me, Motorola did do the Edge 50 Fusion dirty by launching the Edge 50 Neo at just Rs 1000 more with so many more premium features. Apart from battery life, there's no real major reason to pick the Fusion. Which one would you pick? Let us know in the comments and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Bye!